Hi, this is Illia and we are here today with Jeffory Schofield. Um, we're going to continue our conversations today on the practice and protocols of body electronics, which is has been referred to in the past as the science of regeneration. So so Jeffory, do you prefer Jeff or Jeffory? What would you like to be?
Well, I usually get called Jeff, but I'm really quite fond of my name, Jeffory. That was the name, and it's spelled with an O-R-Y, and it's very unique spelling. But let's just go with Jeff. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so you can start off the discussion today, Jeff. I know that you have had a lot of dedication, a lot of practice into what you will explain further and tie that sort of into the body electronics principles and protocols. So will you explain a little bit about what your focus has been as far as recovering memory, or however you feel to address that?
Okay. Well, basically, I was introduced to body electronics principles back in 1984 when I was a chiropractic student, and my wife and I had a newborn with cerebral palsy. So I started doing the point holding to see if we could help with that, because I'd heard John Ray talk about people who had been able to cure themselves of their own cerebral palsy through the principles of body electronics, and that sounded more promising than the expectations we were getting from conventional medicine. So anyway, skip forward another 10 years, I was introduced. Well, let's see, it would have been not that long. But anyway, I was introduced to the principles of rebirthing. And so in body electronics, the principle that pain is the capsule into memory was something that rang true to me. As a chiropractor, I dealt with people in pain all day long. And that pain was actually a messenger trying to teach us something that was out of harmony with the flow. So the principle in body electronics of when we hold points, the points heat up, cool down, and pulse. And I guess the pretty much accepted understanding of this pulse is that that's the healing that's taking place after you've gone through the burning, searing pain and all the word patterns, and then the points cool down, and there's a pulse that comes in, and it's a definite thing that we experience at the conclusion of a point holding session. As the point holder, we can feel this pulse under our fingers. I'm not, I mean, that, do you remember that, Illia, as a definite part of the experience?
Yeah, the pulse is not always felt. The burning fire of the Kundalini, I would say, is the thrust of healing energy that's burning. So the burning, there's a lot of healing within the burning itself. That's really what we're looking to sustain throughout the session and expand. And the pulsing can have, pulsing doesn't always happen at the end, but it can have a couple of reasons, which is one of them is sometimes that the person has run out of minerals, and the points will start to pulse when the mineral, the trace mineral particularly, which are very necessary to the regeneration process. When that starts to lessen, we can get a pulsation there as well. So there can be different. I feel there can be different reasons why it pulses.
Well, okay, fair enough. I remember John teaching that the pulsing was when the healing was taking place, regardless of whether it's during the burning, searing pain, the cooling down, or whatever. There is a healing that takes place. But the point I'm trying to make in connecting the dots with the rebirthing experience that I had, which I really enjoyed, and I started, and I've continued on just like more and more advanced levels of trying to get in touch with what it was actually like for me in the womb. And I assume then that as I tap into that, I'm also tapping into the collective unconscious memories that we all carry of our own individual womb experience. And I also feel that the womb experiences of the ancestry, we also assume those. That's what we call the genetic programming, the genetic weaknesses, or whatever we read when we see and when we look in the iris of the eye for the changes. So anyway, it's very simple. That I was doing the rebirthing, and they always, this is Leonard Orr's rebirthing, and he would always recommend for the wet water rebirthing, where they're actually trying to heal like birth traumas, they would use a snorkel and a nose plug, and they'd have a facilitator. They would like hold them in the water and guide them to just focus on their breathing. And sometimes with a snorkel face down in the water, and just hold them and try to recreate that safe feeling for the person that you're facilitating. So there's rebirthers and there's either dry or wet rebirthing. So pain being the capstone to memory, and being the eternal questioner or student, whatever, I asked the question, well, what's the, of course, in the womb, it was a completely different breathing mechanism, which I've written about, and I've correlated so many of the factors of aging with how we control the flow in the womb. And I look at aging as basically the representation of these fetal memories coming back and curling us back in the ball before we die. And the dominance of these unconscious memories is something that works 24/7 in the unconscious. But anyway, the way it's like, you have principles of body electronics, and then you have the principles of rebirthing. And I saw this opportunity, I suppose, to test the concept that pain is the capstone to memory with the rebirthing use of the nose plug. And in the womb, we obviously didn't have a nose plug. We didn't have a snorkel either. It was getting our oxygen from another place. But most people experience pain when they get water up their nose when they're swimming. And so I asked the question, well, if we had water in our nose in the womb, it must not have been a painful experience as a general rule. So after doing rebirthing with a snorkel and nose plug and loving and having a lot of good experiences that were very similar to what I experienced after having my points held, one day I decided, well, what would happen if I took the nose plug the nose plug off and just curl up in a ball in the fetal position and put the snorkel in my mouth? What would happen if I just elicited the nasal pain. Same as when you're holding points, we elicit the pain. What's the story behind the nasal pain? And it's the for those familiar with the cranial nerves, the nose, the ethmoid plate, is the number one cranial nerve, the sense of smell. And you have 12 cranial nerves, but the number one, and I'm sure people have experience of how a certain smell will bring back a very deep memory, be it, pleasant or unpleasant smells, but it's a way of stimulating memory. You got all your essential oils, all the different, drugs, both legal and illegal, that people stimulate the nasal passages with. And so basically, when 1994, I was working at a horse farm. I was taking care of the mares, and they were birthing these beautiful mares. They're Peruvian horses. And that's been like, my journey has been with the Mother Nature, with the animals, birds and fishes. That's anyway. So what happened, and has happened consistently every time I elicit this nasal pain in my rebirthing process without a nose plug, is my belly button started to pulse. And it's very obvious pulsing. There's like a, and any of the people who have ever been midwives or seen the umbilical cord while the placenta is still attached, there's a pulse, definitely a pulse going through, and a lot of midwives will say, wait for the pulsing to stop, so that all of the exchange between the mom and the baby takes place for the immune system building before you cut the cord. And there's all different types of ways that people deal with the cord. Cut it right at, like in the medical, they cut it right at birth and slap them and get them to breathe that way. But anyway, regardless of how we were introduced into the shift that takes place between how we use the diaphragms in the womb to maintain the flow back and forth between the placenta, the pulsing that I experienced with body electronics under my fingers countless times, I recognized that pulse of my navel as the same pulse. And it was a whole body pulse, but it originated in my belly button. And so I've actually have a Facebook page. And I had a friend, because I would talk about this. I told him, and he one day he came to me and says, I'm going to get, because there's a movie called Dr. Benjamin Button. So he said, I'm going to call you Dr. Bellyman Buttons. So that is actually the name of my Facebook page, where I post a lot of things that seem to resonate with the path I'm on. And so that this in utero breathing mechanism, I think, is what I experienced with all the breathing modalities out there, including body electronics. Yeah, and is that you're obviously taking air in and out, but in the womb the difference was our glottis was closed off. We were not drawing fluids into the lungs because it wasn't necessary. And the fluid flow they've seen on the ultrasound was actually a regurgitation flow out the nose and mouth up until the 7th month. From the time from about the 2nd month to the 7th month, it's a regurgitation flow. This is like the flu memories that we use, all these, even the COVID thing and all the flu shots. It's like it's a suppression of this very innocent way that we all use in the womb to do this gentle, and it's so gentle. That's the thing that amazes me when I tap into these higher levels I call them even higher levels of consciousness, that it's actually a reflection of how gentle this suck push mechanism was as we build our bodies. And I've even with the COVID thing, I saw you mention the guy the other day talking about your take on the pandemic. And so I just want to plug in there. This is what's come to me, is that this gentle in uterine suck push mechanism is actually like our umbilical cord was like a syringe, and it bypassed our skin, and it directly injected into the blood. And this trust that we all have for our umbilical cord and all these memories, it's just so common, and it's like so natural. We don't even know that that's what's actually running the unconscious, is all these memories of when we built this body. But I've likened the reason people are on both sides of this conflict over the immunizations is it's all being fueled by the unconscious trust we had for our original umbilical cord. And I think that's so simple and so beautiful. I don't know if this will resonate with anybody, but I think we're condemned to repeat what we can't remember. So when we're repeating this massive enforcement of this immunization for the COVID and all the other, and they just keep pushing, because that's what we suck pushing. That's the only control we had in the womb. So this is a layer of consciousness that has to be gone through before we can get to, you mentioned the point of no blinking. You know, when you in the body electronics, you know, in the seminars, you reach a place where you can just, you know, be so still that you rise above the blinking. But the blinking actually I found is a part of, it's the twinkle twinkle thing that I've talked about. But it's and these crow's feet, and that was the subtlety. This is the suck push thing that was our control. Anyway, that's how I tied. That's kind of how it was the pulsing. I recognized that it wasn't a head trip. Every time I listened to the nasal pain, my belly button would pulse, and it's done that since 1994. And I've done it thousands of times. I've tried to disprove it. I tried to talk myself out of it because it's so crazy. And believe me, when I try to talk to and tell people, it's like it's way beyond, you know, trying to tell people about body electronics and the healing crisis and consciousness, because it basically when people have a resistance toward anything I'm saying, I realize it's not me. It's just that I stimulate in them a memory they would rather not remember. And so it's like this unconscious resistance, and it's just an automatic, it's like a box, the weird box. I get put into that weird box. And in a way, it's been a protection for me, because, you know, I'm still alive and I'm still breathing, but it feels like I've died 1,000 deaths every time I go through another layer of this nasal pain. And so I sit back and I watch, you know, on the global level. I don't even believe it's a globe, I believe it's flat, but anyway, on the world stage, we're just repeating what we can't remember. And the biggest, and you say yourself, as many people do, that the unconscious mind is like running our show. We're only on the visible spectrum, and we're just 1% of what we perceive is actually the dynamic of what's really happening. So whenever, you know, I always try to take the place of, I'm not going to resist this, whatever this is. With the COVID, you know, I've chosen not to get, you know, and I do, you know, a lot of good nutrition, but I'll tell you, it's like this, the story behind this nasal pain is huge.
Yeah,
and that's where I've been digging. Go ahead.
So are you in the rebirthing process? Are you looking to access the memory, the word patterns, and the emotion within that process, like we do in body electronics?
Yes, I incorporate all the principles I understand from thought, word, and emotional patterns. And it's quite amazing, some of these word patterns that come through me. The other day I had one come through me. It was like, well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. It was so strong. It was like, when something actually works, I didn't expect to work. I was working on a vehicle, and when the windshield wiper fluid thing actually worked, and it sprayed fluid, I was like, oh, I'll be a monkey's uncle. Some of these, I haven't said that, for a long time, but so yeah, I look at the print, and the word patterns, of course, I mentioned the last time we talked about the anger coming and bubbling up, but it's like the words, a lot of times they just don't, like, and I've heard you express, the words don't do justice to the experiential learning. And so basically I've withdrawn, and I haven't tried to teach body electronics. I just basically used all that stuff that I learned, both as a chiropractor and from all my teachers, to apply them on the internal journey. Which, like you said when you was talking with Guy, it's not the intensives that actually where you, it's great to prepare for an intensive and be in the collective community. And I would love that. Believe me, I would love that. But it's like the deeper I go, the weirder it gets. And it's like my belly button just keeps pulsing. It's like, what do I do? I've asked my creator, can I, it's kind of like Jesus said, remove this cup from me, if you would, please. Anyway, that's how I tied it with body electronics, the rebirthing and the belly button pulsing, and then so basically I just let the pulse lead me. And it's usually like 3-4 o'clock in the morning when you're in that theta brainwave and the most relaxed place. I imagine a brainwave we used a lot in the womb. It's like I will have this pulsing come through and word patterns. And I've learned that if I just stay still in the fetal position, curled up in my bed, and do this in uterine breathing mechanism with the glottis closed and all the diaphragms working together, I can milk that pain out. And it's like, whew. And then the pulsing comes in, and it's just like, and so every day when I get up, I just, okay, Creator, what I listen, and every day is different. I have a lot of projects. I've created a very nice healing center for myself. That's what it's worked out to be. So I got my ducks and my dog and my geese, and they love the heck out of it. I'm tuned into all these animals.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
You're seeing like transmutation. So you're, over the years of practicing this, you've seen changes, like consciousness change, and transmutation takes place.
Yes, I don't see any conflict in the principles that I learned from John and Doug and from you and Guy and all the different people. I've been listening as you and Guy talk, and I really enjoy listening. It's my heart, it's my language. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Thank you. That. Getting these bizarre calls today, and I haven't figured out how to stop them. Okay. So, the feeling that came to me this morning around what I wanted to bring forth is It's really interesting. I'm getting a lot of clicks and clacks again. So like after we had our last discussion, I thought maybe it was my audio because I had gotten a new computer and I hadn't used it, but it's not. It's some connection between like how you're receiving the audio. Do you hear the clicks and clacks when I speak? It doesn't happen when you speak. It only happens when I speak. Can you hear
Are you
that?
talking about like, are you referring to your voice? Like, I understand what you're saying, but there'd be like little breaks in the voice as
And
it comes through
there's
to me.
sounds, like there's really like there's sounds that are taking place. Anyway,
I'm not hearing the sounds. I'm hearing it's like a little brief break in the sound that I receive, but then it's very brief to where I still know what you're saying.
okay. So what came to me this morning was it was stimulated by an interview that I posted yesterday on the group page on Facebook, Body Electronics, the Evolution of Consciousness, by Dan Winter. Somebody was interviewing Dan Winter, and it was an excellent interview. So I suggest everybody go there.
I watched that last night.
Uh-huh.
I watched that last night.
Okay. And that really, to me, I mean, there's a lot of, okay, there's the first thing I want to say about that. Of course, Dan Winter is beyond the current level of understanding that we have around physics, at least in the, mainstream physics. So he's taking physics to new levels. And that really ties in for me around body electronics because, and I don't need to know, Dan uses a lot of terminologies and he's, extremely intelligent and he knows exactly what he's talking about. Yet for me, I filter it down with the body electronics experience and the body electronics potential experiences. I filter it down into just that, the working toward that spiritual aspect of that spiritual experience within the body electronics process. So as we know, we start out with the physical and we have nutrient saturation and we give up anything that suppresses the healing crises, and we work towards some really good vibrant health. And from there, that opens up the emotional body. And in the emotional body, we move through the emotional body quite sequentially, both with the point holding process and with the actual evolutionary process that happens as we apply the transmutational principles and really move through and release emotion, suppressed emotion. So we come to that. And with that, as we go upscale, and you mentioned pain is the capstone to memory. So in the body electronics, I would say map of the emotional body, we have 49 levels, which is 7 times 7. So we have 7 main levels, and each one of those levels are present within each level. So we have pain at each level. And level 7 is unconsciousness. We start from level 7 and we work our way down to level 1, or we work our way up to level 1, however you want to view that. And at the top of each level, just before enthusiasm, is the level of pain. And as we access that, wherever we are on the emotional scale, whether we're painful level of unconsciousness or apathy, or painful level of grief, painful level of fear, painful level of anger, painful level of pain, that's when things get really, really intensified in terms of opening ourselves and becoming aware of the mental body. So we become increasingly aware of the mental body as we transmute and move evolutionarily upscale in the scale of emotions. So that's really important to know. And once we're working within the mental body, Then we take it, that takes a whole new level of discipline. And that's what Jeff referred to earlier on the visualization and consciousness course, where that advanced work had taken place in 2005, was the last one that has been held. So during that time, I had registered on the meter a total of 4 times. I think it was like, I'll have to look back at what Doug wrote about it, but because Doug was watching over the other facilitator, who was Carolyn. So it was, I think the first time I went to Zero Ohms Resistance was with you as a facilitator, Jeff, as you were watching the meter. And then the second, third, and fourth time, I believe, was all with Carolyn. And I remember Doug, kind of standing over Carolyn. One time she passed out. She literally became unconscious during the process, whether I was going through the time-space continuum warp or going to Zero Ohms Resistance. It was so I know there's at least 2 times where I went to Zero Ohms Resistance, and a couple of times through the time-space continuum warp, which, to make perfectly clear with people, it's an extremely advanced healing crisis. That's really what this is. Like, we have healing crises on the physical level, where we're purging toxins. That can be considered a physical healing crisis. We have healing crises within the emotional body, where suppressed emotions are coming to the surface, and they present themselves, and it can be extremely overwhelming, and all the way up to the level of pain and into enthusiasm. So there's, with each level within that holistic spectrum, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, we are encouraging and producing and intensifying healing crises. So I think that's really, really important to know for that advanced work where we're doing, and it's just as John Ray's books say in the title, Logic in Sequence. That is the logic in sequence. That is the sort of the natural way back through the way that we came into this. We had this creative process that came in from the spiritual into the mental body. The mental body encompasses the emotional body, and then all of that combined results in physicality. So when we're encouraging the healing crisis, we're going back the way we came. So when we get to that level of discipline and willingness may be the key word all the way through the healing crises, and the quality of the healing crises and the quantity of the healing crises. It really comes down to that core willingness that has to increase as we move through those different stages. So when we get to the spiritual level, and we are then moving through very intense healing crises, and that can result in what we call Zero Ohms Resistance or the time-space continuum warp. And so I suggest, if people are interested in learning about that, and that's why I bring up Dan Winter, and I have posted Dan's work in the past. He has, for people that want a intellectual understanding, a understanding of how it works electrically, and in the realm of what Dan refers to as physics, I refer to as like what we see as the dawning physics or the new physics, which is a an expansion through consciousness change to where we are opening up the light spectrum. We're expanding the light spectrum. That's how I have experienced it. And with that, physics changes. As you know, I mentioned this in the discussion with Guy the other night. Doug said on one of the old 1990s videos, when he was speaking about the time-space continuum warp or even zero ohms resistance, that in our current understanding of physics, that's not supposed to happen. That's, you know, for a human physicality to become a superconductor is literally not in the realm of the current understanding of physics. So again, if you want to have more of an intellectual understanding, I suggest you you look at Dan Winter's work. He's, to my knowledge, Dan is the #1 person on the planet who really has that that knowledge to share. So that just gives you kind of a broader look at what body electronics has to offer. So not to underestimate, not to have these lofty goals of the time-space continuum, because to me it was one of those things that it sort of, and I know we discussed this before, so I won't repeat myself, Jeff, but we discussed before how it sort of took us by surprise. So it definitely took me by surprise. It was something that I had made very clear that I was willing to go through, but beyond that, it was something that really happened very spontaneously, and there was no I guess the best word is control. There was no control around it. It was being this willingness to just jump right into the no control. And it was, you know, very powerful, and it's very life-changing in the sense that consciousness does dramatically change. And if you look at John's books too, he talks a lot about zero ohms resistance and time-space continuum warp in book 3, and those books are to be read in sequence. And there's an involutionary zero ohms resistance, and that would be very difficult to attain if you are working at the evolutionary process of body electronics. But some people I've seen get a little bit almost fearful of going through the zero ohms resistance because they may have misinterpreted those writings. John was pointing out that there's at the sort of at the scale of the light spectrum, there would be a zero ohms resistance at the involutionary spiral, at the you know, the what I would see like the bottom of the involutionary spiral, where you are going in a you know, in a downward spiral. And then there is the evolutionary spiral, which is if we're working through the levels through body electronics, the evolutionary spiral is the direction that we're heading in. We have little plateaus, and we can take little rests and little time where we can enjoy little plateaus within with, you know, sort of in between healing crises. And healing crises is very easy to put on hold. You know, the healing crisis, the difficulty around healing crises is the effort and discipline and willingness and determination and diligence that it takes to get a really good healing crisis. I mean, we hold those very precious once we, you know, we're in a very, we can just really enjoy it, even though it may not be very, very comfortable at all. It could be very, you know, disconcerting and overwhelming. Yet that's, we put a lot of effort to get there. So it's about really appreciating the healing crises once we get there at whatever level we're working with that healing crisis, whether it's, like I said, physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. So I just want to give a broad overview again. I know I'm repeating a little bit of what we discussed last time, but Dan Winter stimulated that in me yesterday, so I wanted to bring that up again. So do you have anything to add to that, Jeff, around the particularly around the zero ohms resistance and the time-space continuum work?
Yes. When we were experiencing that together, and you dropped the zero ohms resistance, I remember Doug saying something while he was watching. He came up behind me, he's watching the meter, and he was saying something that if you go all the way through the time-space continuum, the needle will be like drop to zero, and all of a sudden it'll be over this way, just
right,
instantaneous over the other. So what I remember is you didn't experience it going the other way. You just experienced dropping to zero.
That's right.
Would you like to talk about what the
Yeah.
difference is?
I have a clearer knowing about that now. So what occurred because that was the first time with you during that point holding, after the experiences, I'd realized I had experienced that many, many times throughout my life. And so I knew the feeling, I knew the experience. But through the 4 times during that visualization consciousness course, so with you, that was you were facilitating the first time that happened with me. And the difference between that and going through the time-space continuum work, which happened later with Carolyn, had a very, like in sort of after contemplation, I could see what the difference was. And that was what occurred was I became aware during the time I was in zero ohms resistance, which to me, I think it was like approximately 45 seconds. Is that to your memory?
I don't have a memory of how long. It wasn't, more than 2 minutes. But it was, 45 seconds, it was,
That's
it
sort
wasn't
of
like,
seemed
15
like,
minutes here,
right.
It
Okay.
was very short, relatively
Exactly.
short period of
Yeah.
time.
And during that period of time, I experienced a multitude of things. So it was like the time was completely different than what we experience it in this realm. So what happened was I had this opening, and in that opening of my awareness, I was completely aware of the physicality. I was completely aware that I was in my body. I was aware of you and Doug and the other people in the room. I was aware of my surroundings completely. And I was also simultaneously aware of this overlay that was in the same space. And it was like my vision, my inner vision was open to this other realm. And in that realm, there were these beings. And these beings basically, and it was through telepathy. There was no words at all that was spoken, but it was like this beyond words form of telepathy, where I was shown that I could move forward into a new realm. And in that misunderstanding that I interpreted at that, in that experience, I felt that it was an opportunity for me to leave the body completely. That was how I interpreted it within that time frame of zero ohms resistance. And so I declined at that So I said, in my, in my telepathic sort of, response was, no, I am, what came to my mind was my 4 children, and my 4 children were still young. And I, as a mother, was required to see them, fully cared for as children into adulthood. And so that was the feeling that I looked at in retrospect, that stopped me from going from 0 ohms resistance to through the time-space continuum work. So when it was witnessed by Doug and Carolyn later later in the intensive, I had come to a clarity around, a bit more of a clarity around that. I mean, it took, I don't think there is such a thing as clarity around, true clarity around it. It's just an experience that just expands consciousness. I actually don't feel like it needs to be too intellectualized. I just feel that it has to be known to be an experience that we go through. And then that's why I share it, because I'm doing it so that others have a clearer path in order to have that experience. So when I so at least twice with Carolyn, I went through the time-space continuum, and I think one time only to 0 ohms resistance. So I had a clear, by that time I had a clear, and I will admit that I had more than of a willingness for whatever, which is really, really, really important to the process of evolution. We don't put our sort of, I think John used to, the word that comes to me is druthers. So, what John used to, our druthers onto these experiences. When we're having these experiences, we have to be completely willing, lovingly and willing, enduring all things. And that through that comes this great potential for that evolutionary process. So I think that's just something I wanted to clarify there around that, which is, it was really I feel it was a misunderstanding in that first round, that death was involved, like an actual physical death was involved. So because it felt like I was in both worlds simultaneously. So I'm very compassionate with myself to see that, that was a very likely interpretation, misinterpretation. So anyway, it's just, we keep going with within the process. Yeah.
So can you give me a 1 minute break? My battery's showing low. I need to go get my charger and plug this in so we can keep going.
Certainly.
I'll be right back.
Okay, so today is the 25th of May, 2022, and I'm in Nelson, British Columbia, and I'm working really hard to bring people here to this area. We're within driving distance from Calgary and Vancouver, Kelowna, lots of northern BC towns. And so I'd like to bring people together here in Nelson. I feel like Nelson is a prime location. I've been looking at a lot of these sort of geo path, the geo lines and the way I feel in certain areas. And I really feel like Nelson is an excellent place for body electronics to take place. So I'm working really hard right now to put it into the community and beyond, of course, in other parts of the world too, except of the, we still have some restrictions up, which I would like to those restrictions to be completely removed in the very near future. So Nelson is going to be my my goal at this point. I might as well say it's like I had put it out earlier in the year, and I had put it out as an invitation for people across Canada to host me as either with my body electronics presentation, which is like an afternoon presentation. And I had sort of planned like a driving trip across the country due to travel restrictions. And I'm going to withdraw that offer now, as I have been shown from then till now that the place for me to focus my energy with body electronics is here in the Nelson, British Columbia area. So people can look at what I'm doing. I'm going to be going a little ways north in June and giving another presentation and bringing some more people together. And then as early as August, I will be holding body electronics intensives. And so I'd like people to really start contemplating if they feel the call to come to Nelson to do the work, or if they're in Nelson or in the Nelson area, to reach out to me. I can assist you to in the right direction to get on the nutritional program and so forth. So that's going to start as early as August. And like I said, though, now would be the time to prepare for that. So we're already late May, so June, July. Let's say you have 2.5 months to prepare for doing the actual work, coming together with a group, coming into an intensive with, I'll do lecture, we'll do the point holding, you'll be on the table and you'll be holding points, and we'll come together and build, start to build a body electronics community here in this area. So yeah. Okay, where would you like to go from here, Jeff?
Well, I just, I've run the idea through my mind of coming up there to Nelson a few times because, yeah, but tell me the airport, do you guys, because I looked at flights.
There's no,
and, coming from the US, there's no direct flights into Nelson. So what's the closest city, or is there, I mean, there's an airport in Nelson, but you have to fly. I found flights like coming from Ontario with one stop or something like that.
Okay,
like
we're still
in Ontario. And then,
we are still in complete travel restrictions in Canada. We cannot fly. We cannot take a train. We cannot take a bus, nor can we be on public transit if it is by boat. So we are restricted, extremely restricted in travel here to, within domestically and definitely internationally. So yeah, so that's
wow.
That's not going to happen until we get these restrictions completely abolished. Yeah, unfortunately. But,
yeah, it's okay. Well, I just put it out there, I have a willingness, but of course I have to be able to get there, right?
That's right. Yeah. So we'll see those restrictions. I think Canada is the only, I've heard this many times, so I haven't, I don't look at bureaucracy, but I mean, I do, but as little as possible. I have heard that Canada is the only country in the world that has domestic restrictions on travel for its citizens. So
does that mean you can't even go to another city in your car?
We can't get on a plane, train. Yeah, we can't get on anything that's going to take us from one place to another. We can drive. Okay. We have no restrictions on driving our own vehicle, but we're a very large country. I have children in 3 provinces, and Like I'm in BC and my eldest son is in New Brunswick on the other side of the country. Would take me
I know.
10 days of driving and probably $2,500 to $3,000 each way. So these restrictions are really affecting people's lives, affecting families. People can't go for, funerals and there's, I mean, the myriad of ways that people are being affected is in my opinion, criminal. So as many of the restrictions and mandates are and have been. So we want to see that. We want to see all of that dissolved and never to be heard of again.
Yeah, it's very interesting just to step back and observe, the levels of control coming up in people, in governments, and on all levels too. And I was listening to and speaking of this control and this suppression, I was listening to NPR the other day, and National Public Radio, for those who don't know what that means. Anyway, it's very much a mainstream, type of media, but it's only, on the radio. And they were talking about robots in nursing homes to replace, to take care of, the elderly, and bringing the artificial intelligence technology into the rest homes. And I looked at that, and here's these people as they age and they're becoming more and more childlike. On one end of the spectrum of the aging process, you have this going on, and then bringing in the technology. And then on the newborn, and with wanting to, all the myriads of levels of suppression of any type of memory that is reflecting the prenatal memory of the womb, which is what aging is. People turn into children again and helpless, and they curl back up into the fetal position. And then you go back on the other end of the spectrum for the controls, and they're jabbing them relentlessly with immunizations. And now with the COVID, they're wanting to do that on young children also. But it's all like a hammering. It's like a hammering of or a cutting on a consciousness level, a cutting like the memory of the umbilical cord being cut at birth. I don't know. It's just like a cutting off of anything that would outwardly manifest these memories I'm talking about from the womb. It's curious to just sit back and observe.
Right. And I suggest that they go into the position and lose their cognition through suppression and through resistance. So it's like what is the saving grace is in consciousness change. It is in the willingness to face ourselves, face what we've resisted and suppressed, and have the willingness to really move our consciousness forward into the place and the places where we can literally have beautiful life here on this planet we call Earth. And and the other, just like in the transmutation experience, when we have a complete transmutation, so when we find the memory, the word pattern, and the emotion, we bring those three things simultaneously together, and we apply we draw on the three powers, particularly in the emotional body, which is forgiveness, gratitude, and love. And I mean the real energy of those of those powers, you know, the energy that floods in to transmute the word, emotion, and memory. And when that occurs, that energy that was held by these, you know, these energetic bodies in the field around our bodies literally is released, and we call it going back into the great void. So it goes back in as pure energy and is recycled as pure energy. And that's, you know, that's the beauty of the movement of transmutation. And that can be experienced with everything that we're resisting here right now. What I call, you know, in the last 2.5 years, what we've experienced is like the pressure cooker, where all these beings who seem to be the ones who are the nefarious, I don't even know what to call them, but the ones who want to take control, the ones who want to cause harm, or they may not even want to cause harm, but they're complicit in and being okay that harm is being caused. So just that sort of that energy that we are having on the planet right now is like this pressure cooker for those of us who are actually willing to remove resistance from our consciousness and move physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually into new realms. And so that the other just falls away. You know, we don't have to have, I see a lot of military talk and you know, in how the, you know, the beings who feel that they're on the right side of history or the whatever, you know, that we have to fight the others, or we have to, you know, all of that sort of militarized language. And that's nothing but this. That is resistance. And as long as we're perpetuating that and holding that, we may think we're on the right side of history, but if we do feel that, we're also perpetuating the other side, which is what we might consider and judge as the wrong side of history. So it's about, when we get into the mental body, it's about removing that resistance of that dualistic format. And through the powers of transmutation, that energy that we have been participating in, either on, you know, in whatever way, we find that by going within. Then when we release that energy, when we release that resistance, that's when things start to lighten up. But as long as we are holding on to any of these ideas that people have to keep others in fear or under control or whatever it is, as long as we're perpetuating that by being on the other side, then you know, we see very clearly when we get to the level of pain and we get to see both sides, how we have participated in that. So it's really about concentrating within. And that's why I'm so putting so much energy and effort into bringing body electronics forth, you know, really, really profoundly again for people, so that they can really get to any forms of resistance and change that consciousness and continue to change consciousness. And we just build, we build more and more beauty. You know, we're with that change of consciousness, what is naturally there. You know, love has no opposite. Love is not dualistic. So the love is always present. And when we remove, we find that out very quickly when we start removing resistances that we have put upon and enshrouded that energy we call love. And that love just flows. You know, the beauty flows, the the synchronicities and the energy that we have between the earth and the sun really begins to flow through us, and life becomes more and more and more beautiful. And that's the directions.
Yeah.
It's about letting everything, not to get caught, is what I'm saying. Don't get caught in a trap of being perpetually feeling like you're on one side to the exclusion of the other. We see the other for what it is. We move into a transmutational state, and we move through that so that we're not adding anything to keep it in a perpetuated state of creation. I think that's really important right now. I think, to me, this is it's just such a tremendous time to encourage the healing crises and get into some very powerful transmutational work.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I feel like one of those sayings from the Bible, like Solomon, I think he said, "Nothing new under the sun." Mm. So I experience that everyone has a dream of what they would, the ideal, and it's almost, the fairy tale society where, that's the only, Saint Germain, he used to say that that's the reason the fairy tales were given, of this perfected form of life, because that's the only level on which people could accept such a perfect way of being is through the fairy tales. I even got a copy of Grimm's fairy tales and read through them, and I found some very, very interesting insights into that concept of the fairy tales are actually a story. It's like the parables from Jesus or whatever, that has some very deep truths in it. And one of them talked about this wise woman that lived on a hill, and she would come down every day into the valley where there was greens, and she gathered greens for her goose, and she'd take the greens up to the goose and feed her geese. And she had this beautiful princess that a king was letting her raise so that she could be born or raised in a very pristine virginic type space. And one day there was I guess the king, a king's son, was riding by on his horse, and he saw this woman out there gathering these greens. And so he followed her over, and he talked to her, and she said, "Well, would you help me carry these greens up the hill?" And the comment was is that they were very heavy, and this woman was very fit. She was able to do this every day for her geese. And I have 3 geese, and I've been learning from these geese the again, back to the animals, birds, and fishes, being in the same time-space continuum that we are, and what they're here to do is to actually mirror what we have forgotten from the womb. Believe it or not, that's a dream I had many years ago. That the placenta was actually it was a dream of a pie chart, and that all the animals, birds, and fishes were a collection of consciousness that was housed collectively in this placenta. And that's why they're here, is to reflect to us what we've forgotten of. And so that's why, the barnyard animals and all the farm life is such a lot of fun and animation, especially for young kids, because energetically these beings are programmed to teach us. And these geese are like, they're the big bird of the flock. And so I have ducks and chickens, but the geese, they're like the overseers. And so I think, well, there must be a Mother Goose land somewhere where there are beings who are radiating this dominion of the birds, and I just learned so much, by just watching the nature, and each animal has a different programming, the food chain, you got the prey and the predator, and this goes throughout all the different creations, even when you get into the plant life, you've got, this small, big, and the breakdown, but it all comes back to the level playing field of the ether or the light. But anyway, the fairy tales is anyway. What happened in this one fairy tale is the king's son is helping her carry this up, and he's thinking, man, this is heavy. He wasn't gonna, because he's always riding on a horse, and this woman's packing this stuff by herself, going up the hill. But the geese were woven into that fairy tale. And it ends up in a romantic get together between the king's son and this princess is living up there with her. But when I've looked at how I've been drawn into like Mother Nature and how everything is working together, it's like there's nothing under the sun. And these higher levels of consciousness that we're talking about, the time-space continuum, is something that's available to us all, but the key to it all has to be willingness by choice. Those that have already attained these higher levels of consciousness, the beings that maybe you saw when you were seeing the two realms, and I've had a lot of that. I know you had mentioned about talking about some of the experiences you've had of seeing other dimensions, but there's one experience I had that I very rarely share, but I think at this time maybe I should share it, because it happened when I was actually in Maui at a body electronic seminar, and I just had a cranial, and I'd done about 2-3 weeks of point holding, and I was on a romantic getaway with this woman that I'd met, and she came there and just to be with me and also to experience body electronics. Anyway, so okay. So anyway, we were on a romantic, and this was after I'd been through my divorce and all of the, and I wanted to have a partner. But anyway, so we'd had sex twice, I'd orgasm twice, and I fell asleep, and we were on the floor in the old YMCA in a tent. We were sleeping in sleeping bags on the floor, and she wakes me up as I'm sleeping. She says, "Jeff, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then I fall back asleep, and about 15 minutes later, she wakes me up again and says, "Jeff, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." Why? Why do you ask? He says, "Well, when I woke you up the first time, it was because there was this tube of light coming into your belly." Oh, okay. And it knocked me down because I tried to wake you up. The light actually knocked me down because there was some kind of a transmission taking place. Whew, okay. So anyway, 15 minutes later, when she woke me up again, and whatever this transmission was done, I was talking. Well, I remember what I was dreaming about, and she said, "Well, what was it?" I said, "Well, I saw this beautiful male lion bedded down, and out of its navel was coming the most brilliant starburst color, just the more brilliant than the sun, coming from its navel." Wow. Okay. So that was that dream that stuck with me. Obviously, I'm feeling a lot, just sharing that with whoever watches this video. But the animals, birds, and fishes, the lion being the top of the food chain, supposedly, and a lot of symbolism of the lion. But the lion, what I had the feeling is that brilliant light at the navel represented the lamb, what's been spoken of through a lot. It's been changed to wolf and the lamb in the Bible, Mandela effect or whatever, but it used to be lamb and lion, I think. But anyway, that was the dream I had. And it's basically that understanding of the connection between man and beast, and the reason all these other creatures are here is to be the end of time, the time-space continuum being what we're talking about. And in Revelations, those that have read the Bible know that the angel swears by everything in the heavens, everything in the earth, and everything in the sea, the time shall be no more. So that's, you know, that set the stage for my journey into the wild kingdom, when I was sexually satisfied to the max. Of course, you know, everybody knows a lion has sex several times with several different females all night long. You know, it's like, and all the different creatures have different patterns of sexual energy. But the example the Creator tried to give us through all these animals, birds, and fishes is that we shouldn't be having sex during pregnancy. And then and so he programmed all these other plethora of animals, birds, and fishes not to engage in sex during pregnancy as an example. But of course, the free will, he cannot force us, because this is like what I call the original sin that brought death, dying, and all of the different things that are coming up now. And it's like, all we have to do is just, you know, poof it with, Saint Germain called it the violet consuming flame. Is the only hope for humanity, is learning how to visualize the violet light to transmute our human creation. And so I do a lot of violet light.
We have to get through a lot of our emotional resistance first, because there's a difference between the visualization of the violet light and the violet light that is accessed, the pure violet light that is accessed after you get through a lot of the emotional resistance. Because when you're the sort of not sort of, the rules of the game change, as Doug used to call it, from the love, forgiveness, and gratitude are the powers that transmute the emotional body. The violet fire, the violet flame, is the transmutational force of the mental body. And I spent a lot of time in Mount Shasta, so I was just, it was brought to my attention this week. It was something about Saint Germain, so I went and read somebody out of the first green book, Unveiled Mysteries. And when I first came into body electronics, John was recommending that we read the first 4 books of the green books. And I feel, you know, I'm going to put that out there again, because it was just somebody that I was speaking with, and I went to my library and took the Unveiled Mysteries and just started reading about it. It was about the panther that appeared on Mount Shasta. And so I spent a lot of time on the mountain and working with, you know, the I Am teachings and the violet flame. And body electronics really brought it to clarity when I got to a certain place of emotional evolution, where that violet fire was actually spontaneously, I'd be made aware of it. It wasn't something that I was conjuring up or creating. It was actually there within me. And all I had to do then was allow it and you know, be willing to have it intensify, and be willing to direct it at certain times. There were certain times when it required a certain amount of direction. So yeah,
I love that story about the Black Panther. I remember Saint Germain taught in there that there's when the Black Panther sacrificed its life for Godfrey Ray King, by defending it against the mountain lion or whatever, that Saint Germain made a comment. It was like, in the animal realm, it's like for them to, part of their journey is to give their life in the higher service of the higher good. Because the teachings that came through God's King are priceless. Yeah.
After reading
I
four books,
would like to say,
go ahead.
Okay, well, from the Unveiled Mysteries book, I would just had this thought run through my mind that maybe I should bring this in from the level of understanding of Saint Germain, as he taught that the number one cause of age, 95% of aging, is caused by the misuse of the sexual energy. And it was after engaging in, a complete relaxation of the sexual energy with this girl I was with in Maui, when I had the dream about the lion and the navel being a brilliant starburst. So anyway, in the Green Book, I believe it's in the Unveiled Mysteries, Saint Germain says we don't want to distract people from keeping their attention focused on their I am presence. So he didn't go into a lot of detail about what he meant by the misuse of the sexual energy. He just made it very clear that 95% of the aging is caused by misuse of sexual energy. And they went on to say that it doesn't matter what the doctors say regarding sex during pregnancy. Well, he doesn't say that though. He says it doesn't matter what the medical doctors say about sexuality and the sexual energy, the misuse of that energy, which he described as one of the most difficult energies to master, is the primary cause of aging and death. Not that I'm resisting aging and death. It's been going on forever. I was programmed to die right from the get-go in my mom's womb. But what I'm, that fairy tale of heaven on earth, of the end of our suffering, of our sorrows, of our pain, it's always been, the plan is in place. And I call it, they shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye. I think that's more realistic of an expectation, is that this plan has already been in place. We just have to raise ourselves in consciousness through body electronics to the point where heaven meets earth, and it'll just be like a twinkle, twinkle, it's done. It's not going to be this great big effort. It's the creator has prepared, and all these. And I had another dream I want to share, is I was taken up to, it was like I was walking along the river, and there were a bunch of people, and they're all in bathing suits, and they all started diving in the water. And I'm like, and then there's a tornado came in, and I started spinning backwards, my back towards the outside of the tornado. I was spinning up, almost like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. I was spinning. And as I was I guess somewhere in the part of just letting go and rising in this tornado, there was this like a 32 jeweled breastplate came out of the tornado and came on me. Like this was something I had to be wearing to access where I was going at the top of the tornado. But anyway, I popped out on top, and I'm wearing this thing, and I see like endless clouds of what I call gobbledyheads of energetic consciousnesses. And each one was singing the same song I was singing, which was the one from The Sound of Music. It's like, when you know the notes to sing, you can sing most anything. And we would repeat it, and it was an endless, like a cloud of these gobbledyheads. They looked like a balloon with a little thing, and they had eyes and ears, and they were all singing in harmony this one song of creation. It's like when you know the notes to sing, in other words, creation is made energy, frequency, vibration. So they were singing these 7 tones, like we have 7 and within 7, and they were all singing. And this guy came up next to me, looked like Jesus, not saying it was, but anyway, he had this beard, and he was singing with me and was looking over the edge. I was up on the top of this disc, on top of the tornado, where I popped up. I'm wearing this And it's like, so what I saw is like every form of life in the ethereal, before they manifest as a different form, is energy, frequency, and vibration. And so we're all in this together, all of the life forms, all these chickens and these ducks and these geese, they're in these slaughterhouses, all of these cows and pigs and everybody, all these life forms are here for one purpose. And that's to, bring the fairy tale to earth. Anyway, that's another one of my crazy dreams I had. Oh.
Thank you, Jeff.
Anyway.
You're welcome. I want to complete by saying, complete for today, by saying that I suggest that anybody who is interested in body electronics, the required reading is How We Heal by Douglas Morrison. It's in print, easily obtained from your local bookseller. And the Body Electronics Experience is also in print. You can get it from Amazon, or you can find it on my website as a PDF. And beyond that, start with the logic and sequence. That is all on my website. It can be downloaded and it's all free of charge. John Ray's 3 books. And beyond that, go and get the Unveiled Mysteries, which is the first one, the green books. And then go from there. I mean, John used to, like I said, it was, we were required to read the 4 books. And of course, that sort of led me to Mount Shasta and sleeping on the ground at Panther Meadows. And even in the wintertime, one time I went in January and hiked in a full moon up to Panther Meadows. Well, we went all the way up to the what's called the upper parking lot. That's 7,777 feet. And that's kind of where the tree line ends. But then Panther Meadows is just below that. And we found the spring, the sacred spring, and it was still running. And we hiked through snow that was above our knees. And we laid on the snow with the full moon coming on us next to that spring. And I mean, it was just Mount Shasta. When these travel restrictions are a thing of the past and never to be seen again, I will be definitely visiting Mount Shasta again. It's a really, really spectacular, energetic place. Castle Lake, which we used to call Crystal Lake, is a wonderful place to swim. So I recommend those 4 books. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest and you're near the Mount Shasta, I highly recommend you spend some time there, some really quiet time, and be on the mountain. Yeah. We used to just sleep. I never took a tent or anything like that. Sometimes I would take a pillow, but I'd always have a blanket, and we would just sleep on the ground, even at up in the rocks, up by the parking lot, and anywhere we felt to sleep for a night on the mountain, or several nights, many nights. I've slept up there. So yeah, highly recommend that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jeff. That's another good kind of, we jumped around to a few different topics, but I think there was some really good gems in there that can bring people some clarity. So thank you so much. And thanks for everybody who's listening and watching this now in the future. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch to do this again. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.